Hey everybody, this is Perch. I get asked from time to time, sometimes seriously, most of the time not. Why take these things so seriously? And generally, my feeling is that when you make a point and then somebody wants to argue with you, but they don't actually have anything of interest to say and they don't have a good kind of comeback, one of the frequent things is to try and insult you by saying something along the lines of, "Well, I don't know why you're taking this so seriously," or "This is just comics, man. Why don't you lighten up?" Generally, those arguments are the refuge of somebody who really doesn't have anything intelligent to say and just wants to argue. Because a good counter to that is, if why are you taking it so seriously to respond to somebody who's taking something so seriously? Like, what is the snake eating its own tail aspect of this entire conversation that gets to be very stupid very very quickly? But I want to respond to this as if the person giving this question was serious. Why take it? Why take comics seriously? Why take any of these things seriously? Well, I think there are a number of good answers to that, and let's get into it. So first of all, to point out the very obvious, you only have a limited amount of time on the planet, and what you do with that time falls into a number of different categories: sleeping, eating, going to the bathroom, working. I don't know, wildly fapping to things you see on Instagram. Whatever it happens to be, you have a limited amount of your time that you have to devote to things. And so anything that you're investing your time on, including listening to this crappy channel, it's hopefully by listening to this channel, you also are doing something else. Maybe you're having a coffee break. Maybe you're writing or drawing a comic. Maybe you're driving. Maybe you're taking your kids to school and you've realized you made a horrible mistake by playing it. And now your kids are asking you what fapping means. I don't know what's going on in your life. But regardless, you have a limited amount of time. So if you're going to spend some of that time reading and collecting and making part of your life comics, then that actually is serious business. It's not a joke. It's not a something to take casually. You're choosing to invest your time in something, unless you believe your time is absolutely not worth anything. Yeah, it's reasonable to take it seriously. It also costs money, increasingly a lot of money. And for people who tally up how much money they're spending on comics in a month, I mean, if it's very easy to spend $100 in comics, in a given month. And depending on where you live in the country, that $100 could buy you some pretty good drugs. I mean, for that matter, you can buy a couple good bottles of tequila. You're not going to drink that entire bottle in one sitting. You can make that bottle of tequila last you a week. I mean, if you parse it out, and you don't even need to buy a very expensive bottle of tequila. If you drink enough of it, you'll go for cheaper stuff. You could get 4 or 5 bottles of tequila, which again, depending on your tolerance, can last you an entire week. So the point is, you're revealing more about my drinking habits than people want to know, but things that cost money. I mean, you are working for this money. I mean, assuming you're not stealing it. Now, I know some people have gone to piracy, and there's suddenly an inflated kind of viewpoint of, hey, the comics are shitty, you should just pirate them. Even if that's true, and you are, not paying for it, keep in mind you're still investing your time based on where you're pirating the comic from. Like if you're doing that Read Comics Online site, you are infecting your system with several viruses. You are going to have a Saudi prince looking to have you launder some money for him at some point pretty soon. Like, look, you're put it this way: you're putting something into this effort. But even if you get rid of all of that, the people who create these comics, the people who write them, draw them, they're putting hours of time into it. You can't. Somebody told me the other day, it's like, well, how long does it really take to draw a comic book? Like, like 4 or 5 days to draw a comic book? A whole comic book? No, I mean, several comic artists do a page a day. Sometimes they can do more than that. Somebody can do 2 pages a day, but I mean, it's not 4 or 5 days for the entire 22 pages of comics. It's going to take longer than that, unless you're Mark Bagley, and then you could spit like an entire comic out roughly, in about 4 or 5 hours. But most people, it takes time. So if it takes that amount of time and effort to put out the comic, why shouldn't you take it seriously? A bunch of comic creators are also going on to, online sites to beg for money, to do GoFundMe's, to, sell tarot readings online for cash so they can pay their electricity. I mean, in general, um, you shouldn't you take that seriously? I mean, I think you either got to take it seriously or you got to completely throw your hands up and ignore all of it. I mean, but in general, if you have these creators who are trying to make a living off of all this, then yeah, it's worth taking it seriously. But even if you forget about all of those things, look, in many cases, you've got a comic book, you've got characters, you've got storylines that have been in existence for 50, 60 years. That's a lot of effort, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of history into these characters. Are we not supposed to take this seriously? And I think this is the biggest area where, a comic company takes a character that's existed. I mean, we use the Iceman example. Iceman as a character had been in existence for decades, since the 60s. This character has been, in comics. And then at one point they radically changed the personality and kind of sexual preference and everything of Iceman. And fans are like, well, what the hell? And if the response is, hey, the writer wanted to do something new, the writer wanted to give a new aspect to the personality, the writer wants to be able to take this character in a new direction, okay, you can either accept that or not, fine. But that's still a far better answer than, why are you taking this so seriously? It's just comic book characters. Well, if that's the excuse, if it's just comic book characters and you're not supposed to take it seriously, then why should anybody take it seriously? I guess we can go ahead and completely ignore that the character is gay now, and we can, call the character a bunch of homophobic terms. Why not? It's not serious, right? Go ahead, just let loose with whatever you have in mind. No, of course not. The fans who are going, well, wait a minute, how did we get here? This isn't the history we know, are basically telling you that they had been invested in comics. They'd cared about them. They followed them. Again, forgetting about the money aspect, certainly a ton of time, ton of knowledge, ton of research, and you've casually altered the character, or put it this way, you've changed the character. Nobody really believes it's casual until you say things like, why are you taking it so seriously? Once you do that, it no longer feels like a thoughtful change, and instead it feels like a casual ad hoc, you were bored one day, so F it, why not kind of change. And that tends to drive people up the wall. They want to believe that you respect the source characters as much as they do. And I mean, I'll give you an example. There have been plenty of cases in the past. Terra from the Titans, as an example, if you want to go way back. But you've had characters who have done, villain terms, turned out to be something else. And the fans have generally not rejected. Sometimes they get angry when a character shifts. But, the fans haven't rejected that because the writer and the creative team at least gave the impression that they thought this through, that it was a thoughtful decision, that it was a story they wanted to build to. Maybe you don't agree with the outcome, but you still believe that there was at least some thought that went into it. You believe that the writer and the creative team did take it seriously. You may not agree with the output, but you believe that the person was at least not screwing around in doing it. A lot of the more recent changes use the excuse of, why are you taking it seriously? Why do you care? Why is this a big deal to you? And as soon as you frame it up like that, you give the impression that, as a creative team, you don't take it seriously. And if the writer and the creative team don't take it seriously, why should you, the reader, bother to take it seriously? You see the chain that gets set up here? It's better when everyone treats it like serious business. Treating it like serious business, by the way, does not mean you can't have fun. Doesn't mean the characters can't be lighthearted. Doesn't mean they can't go on adventures that are, less than deathly serious. When the X-Men would play baseball, it was still serious. It's still part of a serious story. That's a good thing. Anyway, it irks me when people throw down the, why are you taking it so seriously excuse. Well, I'm taking it so seriously because I paid for this. I bought it. I paid cash. I put my own time into it, and you're putting this out here like as a product that I'm supposed to consume. You didn't put this out here like junk that I'm supposed to immediately dismiss. Although, by telling people, why are you taking it so seriously? That's how people are going to start to treat your product. Thanks for listening.